She could barely afford her next meal, yet she stood firm and said no to a brand new luxury car. What kind of woman turns down such a gift from a millionaire? What he did next would change her life forever and leave an entire town in shock. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon when Liam Whitaker, heir to a billion-dollar empire, parked his latest toy outside the local community center, a custom black Maserati, polished to perfection. People gathered in awe. Phones came out. Whispers spread. But one person didn't even look twice. Her name was Emily. Emily wore jeans with frayed edges, a sun-faded t-shirt, and sneakers that had seen better days. She walked past the crowd like none of it mattered, focused on delivering meals to the elderly residents inside. That's when Liam noticed her, a girl who didn't stop to admire his car or even glance his way. Curious, he called out, "Hey, what do you think of the car?" he asked with a smug smile, used to being praised. Emily paused, looked over her shoulder, and simply said, "I think someone could have used that money to feed 10 families." Silence fell. The crowd looked back and forth between the rich man and the poor girl who had just dismissed him. Liam laughed awkwardly, not knowing what to say. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like her. Later that day, Liam asked one of his assistants who she was. No one knew. She wasn't on social media. She didn't attend any events. She was invisible to his world, but Emily wasn't invisible to the people who mattered. At the center, she was known as the girl who always showed up, whether it was raining or snowing. She cared for others before herself. She lived with her sick grandmother in a tiny rented apartment. Every dollar she earned went toward rent, medicine, and groceries. What Liam didn't know yet was that Emily had once tasted luxury, and it had nearly destroyed her. She wasn't rejecting the car. She was rejecting everything it stood for. The story of how she said no to a man who could buy anything was just the beginning. What would happen next would not only test Emily's strength, but force Liam to question everything he believed about life, value, and love. Emily had never known a day of ease. Her mornings began before the sun rose, in a tiny 2-room apartment that she shared with her grandmother, Lorraine. The kitchen had a constant drip from the faucet, and the stove needed to be lit with a match. But it was home. And for Emily, that was enough. She worked at the town's community center 6 days a week, preparing meals for seniors, organizing clothing donations, and tutoring children after school. She didn't earn much, but every dollar was stretched with the kind of grace that only someone who's known hunger could manage. Her grandmother, once a seamstress with golden hands, now spent her days in a worn recliner, her health too fragile to allow her to walk unassisted. Emily cared for her with quiet devotion, braiding her hair in the mornings, reading her Bible passages at night. They shared meals, memories, and unspoken strength. People in town often whispered about her, some in admiration, others with pity. She could be so much more, they'd say. But Emily didn't care. She had chosen this path, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Emily had one rule in life: never owe anyone anything. That rule had been carved into her heart after her father walked out, leaving nothing behind but a mountain of debt and a mother who crumbled under the weight of it. Emily learned young that gifts could come with chains, and she wanted none of them. She didn't hate rich people. She just didn't trust them. To her, wealth was often a mask, one that hid intentions, twisted love into obligation, and made people believe they could own others. That's why she had looked Liam Whitaker in the eyes and refused his car without a second thought. Still, there were moments at night when Emily let herself dream, not of riches or mansions, but of a little garden, a home with a real porch, and enough money to fix her grandmother's teeth. She never said it aloud, but those dreams lived quietly in her chest, waiting for the right wind to stir them. That same week, as she helped organize a fundraiser for new classroom supplies, Emily noticed someone watching her from across the street. A man in a ball cap leaning against a lamppost, pretending to read a newspaper. She looked at him for a second too long, and in that moment something shifted. She didn't know it yet, but the man behind the newspaper was Liam, and he wasn't there by accident. The next morning, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds as Emily made her way to the bakery, where she picked up leftover bread for the shelter. She pushed her old bicycle, the basket rattling with every bump in the sidewalk. And once again, Liam watched from a distance. He hadn't planned it this way. At first it was curiosity. How could someone so young, so beautiful, and so grounded turn down something most people dream of? But now, it was something else. There was a magnetism in her simplicity that unsettled him. Liam wasn't used to being ignored. He was the kind of man people wanted to be near, whether for influence, money, or opportunity. But Emily didn't even glance at him. She walked past him at the bakery without a flicker of recognition, and that, oddly, made him want to know her more. That afternoon, the rain finally fell. Buckets of it. As Emily left the center carrying a large box of books for the children's corner, she slipped on the wet steps and dropped everything. Without hesitation, a man rushed to her side, holding an umbrella over her and kneeling to gather the scattered books. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice warm, unfamiliar. Emily looked up, startled by the sudden help. "I'm fine. Thank you," she replied, her hands brushing wet strands of hair from her face. She didn't realize who he was. Liam smiled, relieved she hadn't recognized him. He introduced himself as Lee, claiming to be a new volunteer in town. It wasn't a total lie. He had signed up that morning using a fake name. Over the next few days, Lee started showing up regularly. He cleaned tables, helped carry heavy boxes, and played chess with the elderly residents. Emily observed him with quiet curiosity. There was something odd about him. His clothes were too clean, his hands too soft, his phone too expensive for a man who claimed to be a drifter. Still, he worked. He listened. He laughed when the kids made jokes. And slowly, without even realizing it, Emily let down her guard. One afternoon, as they folded donated clothes together, Liam asked, "Why'd you turn down the Maserati?" Emily froze, her hands still on a worn jacket. She looked at him, suspicious now. "How do you know about that?" He shrugged, pretending nonchalance. "Small town, people talk." Emily narrowed her eyes but said nothing. Then, quietly, she replied, "Because I don't believe in buying love, and I definitely don't believe in being bought." The words hit Liam like a stone to the chest. She had no idea who he really was, and for the first time in a long time he felt small, not because she belittled him, but because she didn't need him to be anyone but himself. What he didn't know was that Emily was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in years: hope. But hope, when misplaced, can be more dangerous than any lie. The next time Liam saw Emily, she was sitting alone on the back steps of the community center, a worn notebook in her hands. It was the first time he saw her still. Her eyes, usually bright with purpose, now held a faraway sadness, as if replaying scenes only she could see. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay?" Emily didn't answer at first. She closed the notebook gently, placed it on her lap, and finally said, "Do you ever feel like life gave you just enough to survive, but never enough to dream?" Liam sat beside her, unsure how to respond. It was a question too honest for a casual answer. "My dad was a gambler," she said, voice steady but soft. "He used to win big, then lose it all. When I was 10, he pawned my mom's wedding ring to pay a debt. She left a week later. I haven't seen her since." Liam's chest tightened. "We moved from place to place after that, always chasing jobs, dodging rent collectors. He promised me things, always promising, that one day we'd be rich, that we'd have a house with a fireplace, that I'd go to college." She gave a dry laugh. "The only thing he ever gave me was a fear of promises." Liam remained silent. It wasn't time for him to talk. It was time to listen. "He died in a motel room, owed everyone, left me with nothing but shame and broken trust. Since then, I made a vow: never accept what you can't earn. Never believe a man just because he says he means well." She looked at him then, her eyes piercing. "So if you're here to offer something, make sure it comes with truth, not price tags." Liam swallowed hard. He wasn't used to this. To raw, unfiltered honesty. Most people in his world hid behind charm and convenience. Emily stood naked in her truth, and it made her the strongest person he'd ever met. He wanted to tell her who he really was, that Lee was a mask, that the car she refused had been from him. But he couldn't, not yet. Something told him she wasn't ready to hear it. And maybe he wasn't ready either. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. Her story echoed in his mind. The pain, the strength, the quiet dignity. For the first time, he saw his wealth not as a gift, but a wall between people like him and people like her. But what Liam didn't know was that Emily had begun to write again. In that notebook was a letter, unfinished, unaddressed, but filled with feelings she hadn't dared express in years. And in those words, her heart was opening, just as Liam's truth threatened to tear it all apart. Back in his penthouse suite, Liam stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. The skyline, once a symbol of power and ambition, now seemed meaningless. His phone buzzed with messages from board members, lawyers, and a fiancée he hadn't spoken to in weeks. But all he could think about was Emily. Who was she really? And why did he feel like a stranger in his own world after meeting her? He found himself replaying every conversation they'd had, her eyes, the tremble in her voice when she spoke of her past, the pride with which she carried her burdens. She had given him nothing, yet he felt richer around her than he ever had with his wealth. Over the next days, Liam doubled down on his Lee persona. He showed up earlier at the center, stayed later, volunteered on weekends. He helped fix broken shelves, paint classrooms, and even learned how to make meatloaf from a sweet old woman named Doris. But his presence didn't go unnoticed. Some of the older volunteers began whispering, wondering where this man had come from, how he knew so much yet asked for so little. Emily, however, remained cautious. She smiled more now, but there was a wall in her eyes, a wall built by years of disappointment. Still, there were cracks. Sometimes when Liam made the children laugh, she'd look at him with something softer than suspicion, something like hope. Then came the day he saw her cry. It was late after closing. Emily had stayed behind to clean. Liam returned to get his jacket and found her kneeling by the kitchen sink, her head in her hands, shoulders trembling. He didn't speak, just walked over and knelt beside her. She didn't flinch. She let the silence wrap around them like a blanket. Then she whispered, "They're raising the rent. Again. I don't know if we can stay." That moment broke something in him, not out of pity, but out of rage at the injustice. How could someone so good, so selfless, be the one always suffering? He wanted to help. Every cell in his body screamed to fix it, but he remembered her rule: never accept what you can't earn. That night, Liam called his lawyer. "I want to create a foundation, anonymous, quiet, something that supports low-income families in her neighborhood. Start tomorrow." But no amount of legal paperwork could change the truth. He was falling in love with her, and she had no idea who he really was. What he didn't know was that Emily was beginning to sense something. His hands, his shoes, even the way he spoke sometimes. It didn't add up. And she had learned long ago that when something felt too good to be true, it usually was. The change was subtle at first, Liam offering to walk Emily home after late shifts, her not refusing. They'd talk about life, childhood memories, and sometimes just walk in silence. It was a piece neither of them realized they were missing. One evening, they sat on a park bench beneath a flickering street lamp. Emily shared how, as a child, she used to dream of becoming a teacher. "Not because I wanted to stand in front of a class," she said, "but because I wanted to be the kind of adult I never had." Liam smiled. "You already are." Those words lingered with her long after he left that night. But as they grew closer, their differences began to surface. Emily never had time for leisure while Liam was used to indulgence. He accidentally let it slip that he had once dined in Paris, something no volunteer drifter could realistically afford. Emily didn't say anything at the time, but that night, her thoughts raced. Who exactly was Lee? Where did he come from? Why did he know things about the world that even the local mayor wouldn't? At the same time, Liam struggled to keep his secret. His heart told him to tell the truth, but every time he looked into her eyes, he remembered her words. "I don't believe in being bought." If she found out he was the same man who offered her that car, the same man she distrusted deeply, it could shatter everything they'd built. Tension brewed beneath the surface. One day, Emily invited Liam to dinner at her apartment. It was modest, walls chipped, furniture old, but filled with warmth. Lorraine, her grandmother, was charming and sharp, even in her fragile state. Liam helped set the table and listened to stories of Emily as a child. For a few hours, he felt like he belonged somewhere real. After Lorraine went to bed, Emily served 2 slices of leftover pie. "It's not much," she said. "It's perfect," he replied, watching her closely. And then, something shifted. Their eyes locked, and for a moment all pretense faded. He leaned forward slowly, unsure. She didn't move away. Their lips touched, soft, hesitant, filled with fear and longing. But just as quickly, Emily pulled back. "I can't," she whispered. "Not until I know who you really are." Liam's heart dropped. She didn't say it in anger, but in pain. She knew, or at least, she suspected. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Emily stood, gathering the plates. "I've lived my whole life around people pretending to be something they're not. I won't let myself fall for another one." Liam left that night knowing the truth could no longer wait. He had to tell her everything, but he didn't realize someone else might get to her first. The next morning, the sun rose cruelly bright over the town, as if mocking the storm that was about to break. Emily walked into the community center and found something waiting on her desk. A glossy magazine left open to a page that sent a jolt through her chest. There he was, Liam Whitaker, billionaire, CEO of Whitaker Holdings, smiling on the cover, arms crossed in front of a fleet of luxury cars, including the exact Maserati she had rejected. She stared at the photo, her hands trembling, her stomach turned. Everything made sense now. The expensive shoes, the foreign vocabulary, the strange knowledge. Lee was Liam, the same man she had dismissed with disdain, the same man who had crept into her heart under a lie. She didn't cry. Not yet. When Liam arrived later that day, she didn't say a word. Just handed him the magazine, his face paled. "I was going to tell you," he said, voice low. "You lied," she interrupted, calm but cold. "Every moment, every word. Was I some kind of project to you? A game?" "No," he said quickly. "It was never like that. I wanted to know you without the money getting in the way. You're different, Emily. You're the first person who ever saw me. Not the wealth, not the name. Me." Her eyes welled with tears now, but she held them back. "You think that makes it better? You manipulated me. You pretended to be someone you're not. You used your power, your resources to sneak into my life. That's not love. That's control." He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Don't." Liam didn't argue. He knew he'd lost something precious. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," she whispered, "and now I don't know what was real." That night, Emily didn't go home. She sat at the park bench where they once laughed. The air was cold, the sky threatening rain, but she didn't move. She stared into nothing, trying to remember every moment with him, every laugh, every glance, every touch, and wondering which parts were true. Back in his penthouse, Liam shut off his phone, ignored the calls from his board, his assistants, and even his fiancée, who now demanded answers of her own. He stood by the window and looked at the city he once ruled, now feeling like an exile in his own kingdom. But what neither of them knew was that something else was unfolding behind the scenes. Emily's quiet dignity, her story, and her fierce rejection of privilege had caught the attention of someone powerful. Someone who would soon knock on her door, not with questions but with an offer that would change everything. Days passed in silence. Emily didn't return Liam's messages. She didn't open the door when he came by. And worst of all, she didn't go to the community center. It wasn't out of pride. It was survival. She knew herself. She knew the danger of loving someone like him, someone who could twist reality with a smile and leave her questioning her own worth. She wasn't angry because he was rich. She was angry because he had taken the one thing she offered freely: trust. At home, her grandmother noticed the shift. "Did he hurt you, sweetheart?" Lorraine asked gently. Emily hesitated. "He made me believe I was finally safe, and then he proved I wasn't." Lorraine nodded slowly. "Sometimes the devil doesn't come in a red suit. Sometimes he comes with good intentions and a broken heart." Meanwhile, Liam sat in his office, surrounded by silence. His company board threatened legal action for abandoning meetings. His image, once pristine, now made headlines with rumors of scandal and betrayal. But he didn't care. None of it mattered anymore. He reread the last message he sent Emily a dozen times. "I love you, and I'm sorry. I'll wait as long as it takes." But Emily didn't respond. Instead, she turned inward. She poured herself into the community center again. She worked harder, stayed later, and avoided questions about Lee. Her notebooks filled with pages of thoughts, pain, poems, and one sentence she wrote over and over: "Some people are born with walls, others build them to survive." One evening, she received a letter in the mail. It had no return address. Inside was a check, $10,000, and a note: "To help with rent and repairs. No strings attached. From someone who believes in you." Emily tore the check in half. But days later, another envelope arrived, this time with $20,000. A small note: "Whether you accept it or not, you changed me. Let me do this right." She tore it too, not out of pride, but because money could never undo deception. What Emily didn't know was that the entire town was whispering. They had seen the magazine cover. They had seen Liam. Some admired his persistence, others blamed him. But no one dared to say what Emily feared the most: that maybe she had pushed away someone who truly loved her. Then one night she found herself standing in front of the car dealership, the same one where the Maserati had been offered. It was gone now, but in its place was a photograph on the glass, her holding a tray of food at the community center with the words, "Real value can't be bought. It's lived." She stepped back, heart pounding. Had he done this? Was it his way of apologizing? Or was it just another manipulation? She didn't know. But deep down, behind the layers of pain, something in her still believed in the man who had held an umbrella for her in the rain. Even if his name had been a lie, the following Saturday was colder than usual, the kind of day where even the sun seemed reluctant to shine. Emily was organizing coats at the shelter when a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. A large delivery truck had pulled up. Volunteers, confused, stepped out to see what was happening. And then, one by one, boxes began to be unloaded, each labeled, "For Emily's Center." Inside, new kitchen appliances, educational toys, warm clothing, books, medical supplies. No name, no signature. Emily froze. She stepped forward slowly, her hands trembling as she opened one of the boxes. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "This is not a gift. This is a thank you. For every life you've touched, for every soul you've healed, for reminding me that love doesn't live in wealth, it lives in sacrifice. I still don't deserve you, but I had to try." It wasn't signed, but she knew the handwriting. Tears welled up in her eyes, not because of the donations, but because of what they meant. He had listened. He had respected her enough not to show his face. He hadn't tried to buy her love back, only to honor who she was. For the first time in weeks, Emily let herself breathe, deeply. She didn't feel tricked or manipulated. She felt seen. That night, she visited the old park bench, the same place where their friendship began. And there, as if summoned by fate, Liam appeared, dressed simply, no security, no pretense. He didn't walk to her. He waited. He let her come to him, and she did. "I saw what you did," she said softly. "You didn't have to." "I did," he replied, "because I broke something sacred, and I wanted to fix it. Not to win you back, but because it was right. Emily nodded, her voice almost a whisper. You didn't buy anything this time. You gave. He looked down, then met her eyes. It's all I ever wanted to do. I just didn't know how. Until you. They sat in silence, shoulder to shoulder. No promises, no declarations. Just a quiet understanding that healing had begun. Then Emily spoke, unexpected and gentle. Do you want to come to dinner tomorrow? Lorraine misses your laugh. Liam turned his face toward her, eyes wide. You sure? She smiled. I'm sure of very few things in life, but this might be one of them. And in that moment, beneath the cold sky and the bare trees, two people from opposite worlds found a middle ground, built not on money or fantasy, but on truth, humility, and second chances. 3 months passed. The air was warmer now, and with spring came new beginnings. The community center was thriving, children laughing in the classrooms, seniors dancing during afternoon socials, and shelves always full thanks to quiet, steady donations from a foundation that no one knew bore Liam's fingerprints. Emily and Liam weren't rushing anything. They walked hand in hand through life, carefully, tenderly. Two people scarred by different battles, now fighting together for the same peace. But just when it seemed that all wounds had healed, life presented them with one final surprise. One afternoon, Emily came home to find a woman sitting beside her grandmother, an older lady with gentle eyes, tears streaming down her face. Lorraine looked up and whispered, "Emily, it's your mother." Emily froze. Her heart stopped. Time rewound itself. The woman stood slowly. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I was broken back then. I didn't know how to be a mother. But I never stopped thinking about you." The rage Emily expected to feel didn't come. Instead, there was a strange calm. Maybe it was because she had already learned forgiveness. Maybe because Liam had shown her what it meant to give without expecting anything in return. She sat down, face to face with the woman who had disappeared decades ago. "I can't promise I'll forget," Emily said, "but I'm willing to try to understand." Liam arrived shortly after, finding Emily in tears, holding her mother's hand. He didn't ask questions. He just sat beside her, knowing this was the last piece of her puzzle falling into place. Weeks later, Emily stood at the front of the community center. This time not as a volunteer, but as its new director. The board had voted unanimously, and the announcement was met with a standing ovation. And when asked to speak, she stepped to the podium and said just one sentence: "We don't need to be rich to change lives. We just need to care enough to show up." As the crowd applauded, Liam watched her from the back of the room, eyes full of pride, not because she had chosen him, but because she had never stopped choosing herself. Later that evening, as they walked home, Liam pulled a small box from his pocket. Not a ring, not yet. Inside was a key. "It's to a house," he said. "A little garden, a front porch. Just like you dreamed. It's yours. No strings, no expectations." Emily looked at him, tears in her eyes. She took the key, placed it in his hand, and whispered, "Only if you live there too." And just like that, the girl who had once rejected a luxury car accepted a future built not on wealth, but on truth, healing, and love. Sometimes, the richest people are those who have the least, because they've learned how to love without conditions and forgive without pride. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from something shiny to protect something sacred? Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have accepted the car or done what Emily did? We want to hear your opinion. If this story touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps our channel reach even more people with messages of hope and transformation. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our powerful stories. Now, click on the video on your screen to watch more stories that will truly move you.